Hi, this is Phil Hinton, and on Wednesday the 17th of December, AVForums TV headed for TLC Broadcast in Borehamwood to meet up with 2 forum members who wanted to hold a shootout between 8 Blu-ray players. The purpose of their event was to see if there was any differences between players at differing price points, and what would those differences be. The test setup was independent of TLC Broadcast and was merely using their facilities to run the tests out of the box onto a calibrated Pioneer 60-inch plasma. So what were the forum members looking for during this test?
Okay, the reason I'm here today is to see various levels of Blu-ray players and see what different picture processing they have.
The reason I'm here today is much the same. Retired my PS3 a couple of months ago, looking to get into a standalone player. Want to see really if it's worth spending the extra money on the different levels that you can get.
Yeah, I'm hoping to see the differences between the various players at the different price points and see if it helps dispel the myth that 1080p 24 is the same no matter what you play it through. So, you know, what processing do you get for your extra money? Does it make a difference to the depth of picture? You know, and like Steve said, is it worth spending the extra money for those things?
I'd like to think when you're going from a £100 player up to a £1,600 players in the Denon 3800 that you would see some difference. I know on the forum there's discussion at the moment as regards whether you do see that much difference, as well as coming from PS3 and looking to get a standalone player. I'd like to know that my money's going to be worth spending. So yeah, I'd like to think we'll see a big difference.
Well, there's been a lot of discussion and threads on the forums that have been quite specifically asking the question, do different Blu-ray players have different performance? Is it worth spending double, treble or quadruple the amount of money on one Blu-ray player or brand compared to another? And some people are saying, well, it can't possibly be the case that there are any differences because it's all digital and it's all Blu-ray. So the performance of the players must be the same. The implication of that is that anybody who buys a more expensive player is a mug, basically. They're not buying anything for the extra money except possibly a different brand name or slightly more sturdy construction. Now, I don't believe that's the case. In fact, I'm personally absolutely sure it's not the case because we've looked at all kinds of different players at all kinds of different price points in this room and we see differences. Other people have argued that we're just seeing what we want to see. So what I'm really hoping that today will achieve is that we can nail once and for all, do different Blu-ray players from different manufacturers at different price points, have the same quality images or different quality images, and if so, what are those differences? And ideally also, do other people feel that those differences might be worth the sorts of differences in money that we're talking about from players ranging nowadays from £100 all the way up to well over £1,000. So for me, the key thing today is to find out in a truly impartial way what those differences are, or if they even exist.
Even though the guys only looked at Blu-ray Player picture playback, it still took them over 9 hours of viewing and reviewing the various machines before they could come up with some opinions of what they had seen and what differences there were with the various players. So, what were the conclusions drawn up from this interesting experiment?
Sort of suffer from memory fade, I think, at this stage of the evening, but I mean, there are definite differences between all of the players. You can see them on the screen. What they seem to equate to in terms of what it means to watching the film is things like the depth of field and the three-dimensional the image becomes, as well as the amount of detail that they manage to resolve. Definite differences in black levels, etc. So whether the jumps are sort of equal in size and quality to, you know, jumps in price is a sort of another debate, but certainly between all of the players it was very difficult to say that one is exactly the same as that one, with the possible exception of the 2 Pioneers, I think, which were very, very close to call, but they were also the last 2 we looked at, so fatigue might have been entering in at that point.
Yeah, I think that's what we come here to set out to see if we could actually see the differences in the different price ranges, really. And I think it's fair that we all saw those differences. That you got the more you spend, the image did improve. It was more the depth to the picture that we saw. Even though there were obviously, when we were pausing shots, you could see different detail levels. But when you sit back and watch the film, it was that sort of pop to the picture, that depth, that was the thing that stood out more than anything. And although the cheaper players do a surprisingly good job for what they cost, and a lot of people are very happy with them, you do go up in price and you do go up in quality of the picture. It depends how much you want to spend and what your budget is really, if you can warrant spending that extra money, but there's definitely an improvement as you go up the price range.
You definitely need to see some of the players so that you can see for yourself what the differences are. And you need to do that really on the same screen, so at least you can rule that out as your difference.
Coming here as well today, obviously the screens have been calibrated, and obviously there's a big advantage there when you're comparing picture quality, to have an ISF calibrated screen, knowing that what you're watching on has been set to the correct standards and levels that you're going to be watching on.
I think the thing that stood out the most on the players was how good the Bush was for the money. Bush have got a reputation as a brand, I guess, as being pretty down in the bargain basement and fairly low level on performance, but actually in terms of the lower end of the Blu-ray players we tested today, it put in a pretty decent showing. On 1080p 24 it was actually not too bad. And although it was different to the Sony, different's probably the word rather than worse, because it pluses and minuses to both of them in relation to each other. It's not quite so surprising, I guess, that the most expensive Denon gives the best picture. So yeah, I think for me the surprise of the day was just how well the Busher performed, and I guess how that's, if you like, the lower end of the Blu-ray players are actually a fairly decent picture to start with, but the higher end ones do take that further and improve on that.
Well, Phil, it's gone midnight now. We've been here at doing this for many, many hours, and it's certainly been quite a revelation to see so many players at so many different price points and study them in such intensity. But I'm more sure than ever that there are quite big differences between the budget players and the more expensive players. The other thing that was surprising for me is how good the budget Blu-ray players are at around about £100. They do provide a really quite a nice picture. But when you reach the mid and high-end players, then lots of things suddenly change for the better for me. The most dramatic changes once you reach the mid price point, so that suddenly images stop looking flat, they look much more three-dimensional, you see much less noise, the whole image comes alive and pops and sings, or whatever you want to call it, in a way that none of the budget players can achieve. Whether you think that sort of performance is worth the extra money, because it's quite a lot of extra money, is an individual decision, but there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that you reach a price point in the mid-range where suddenly the player's performance far outstrips those of the budget players. When you move on to the very high-end players, where things are costing more than £1,000, you can see improvements again, and you can hear improvements in the sound. So overall, I'm now quite sure, and I'd be very surprised if your reviewers come to a different conclusion, that the more you spend on a Blu-ray player, the better the performance that you get out of it.